All right, Zig on the top. Today on the show, we have Bex Marshall. She is a British-based blues guitarist, singer, songwriter. Bex has a new record out. It's called Fortuna. It's available on all streaming platforms, and it's her first record in 10 years, and it slaps. We're going to listen to a tune here. This is Preaching to the Choir off Fortuna, Bex Marshall. Bex Marshall, the album was Fortuna, the tune Preaching to the Choir. It's available now on all streaming platforms. Bex was delightful. This was a really nice conversation. I really dug getting to dive into her career. She also teaches songwriting at songwriting retreats. The North Cyprus Writing Retreat is now available. You can enroll in it if you go to bexmarshall.com. The next available dates are the 10th through the 17th of June 2024. So if you want to learn from the master, you can sign up. I believe it's online as well, and you can do it from anywhere. And if you keep listening, we talk a little bit about songwriting. So that being said, lastly, if you like what you hear, if you can like, rate, review, subscribe to the podcast on any of the podcast platforms, it helps me keep talking to cool guests like Bex and sharing her insight with you. So without further ado, this is my conversation with Bex. Now, to dive into it, the record's awesome, and your playing's fantastic. But I kind of wanted to get some background. Now, your grandmother was the original fairground fortune teller. Like,
yes,
what?
I know. My great great grandmother on my mother's side was a lady called Madam Olga, and that, you know, they were travellers. You know, she lived in a barrel top caravan, and she had 13 kids, and you know, one of them was my grandfather, and you know, they kind of ran the fairground down here in Plymouth, and so I had a huge family growing up, you know, the Kylie side, and that was like you sort of gypsy tramps and thieves sort of family, you know. But of Irish descent, and yeah, so there's always been that kind of travelling sort of blood in me, which is where I feel comfortable. I feel very at home on the road.
That makes sense. That would make sense. That's fascinating. And I guess on your other side of the family too, there's some of this performative roots, right?
Yeah, well, my father is actually called was called Coleridge. Sadly, passed away last year, and his lineage goes back to Samuel Coleridge Taylor, who was a very famous poet, and then goes back again in history to William the Conqueror. I mean, my father's side was kind of, you know, landed gentry. You know, sort of lords and ladies and all that kind of sort of. So it's like one sort of, you know, completely different than my mother's, and you know, so I'm the sort of product of those two, which is quite hilarious, really. But you know, musically, I definitely pick up from both sides, because obviously the Irish side is very rootsy, and you know, that's where I think the music side comes, and then my father's side is very lyrical, you know, because my father used to write songs as well and poems, and he was a real character and a storyteller, and that was his thing. He was probably the best storyteller I've ever heard. I mean, he was a comedian and a huge character, real gregarious character, and he was, you know, he made a lot of people laugh in his life. So, you know, I'm very grateful for both of those sort of inputs.
That's incredible. Like, especially to go into songwriting after having roots like that. Like, as far as like hearing that all the time from your dad, because so much of songwriting is that storytelling. But I want to pick your brain about that in a second. Can you tell me about the 1963 Gibson Hummingbird guitar from your uncle?
Yeah. I played it last night at a gig, actually. I don't normally play it. I don't normally take it out because obviously it's quite a rare and, you know, valuable instrument these days. My Uncle David, my mother's my mother's brother. Back in the day, he was a bit of a, he was in the running. I mean, he could have been the next Elvis, or he was going at the time where, you know. Everybody was kind of trying to make their mark on the music scene here, and he was in a band called the Marauders, and so he had the jet black hair, and he had the most incredible voice, very much like Roy Orbison, and he was a great guitarist. He was up there singing and playing just like Elvis, and I remember him coming down to visit and coming into into my mum's house, and just getting the Gibson out and strumming it and singing, and his voice was so powerful and projected and incredible. It just stunned me. It was like one of those moments where the music hit me, and it hit me for sick. I was like struck deaf, dumb, and blind. It was like a scene from Tommy.
Yeah.
And that was where the light bulb came on for me. And I needed to play the guitar. So a couple of years later, he kind of went through this crazy sort of midlife crisis, and came down and gave me the Gibson, thankfully, because God knows where it would have ended up. But he remained, we remained close throughout his life. He sadly died last year as well. But he was always very, proud of my, me going into the music business full time and stuff. And that guitar now had its third overhaul the other day. I picked it up from the luthiers, and they were like, wow, we just don't see them like this anymore. And it's great. It's in great shape, plays like a dream. It's so peachy, sweet spot, all that. I'm just very proud of it, and I realise when I play it, it's the best guitar I own.
Do you remember what song he sang that day?
No,
No?
I don't. It was probably one of his.
Yeah.
They did cut a couple of singles back in the day, and he might have been Bye Bye Love or something like that, or I don't know why that song just popped in my head, but I think it probably was Bye Bye Love. Yeah.
Now, did you hear that radio-wise or around you before your uncle, or was your uncle kind of like the intro to rock and roll?
Where I was born, I'm here now in Plymouth, actually in my dad's house, and it's not a music. It was never a music city. This place, I wasn't brought up listening to live music. It's not the sort of thing you did really, is become a musician from here. Back in the day. Excuse me. I don't know. It was one of those things that I was just very lucky to be blessed with a family who had great musical taste, and I only listened to what was available. There wasn't internet back then, so it's not like I could. I had the tools to sort of go out and find stuff. It was just whatever was brought in front of me, and so. It was. I picked up on it early, and I pushed forward, and I stamped my feet until I got a guitar, and I was about 9.
What a cool, I don't know. That's so special though, to be able to carry like that with you. That and knowing how like proud your uncle was of you, and like to be able to still like have that guitar playable, and like still be able to like celebrate his legacy through yours. That's so cool. Like, there's
he used to,
sorry, no, sorry.
Yeah. No, I mean, he used to keep tabs on me, and but he played up until his late 70s. I mean, and he was still going around old folks' homes playing, and his voice was still strong at that age. So his passion went right the way through his life too. And he would always say about all his guitars, I've got this now, and I've got this and that. And I go, yeah, but none of them are as good as the one you gave me. And you go, no, that's true.
One thing I'd be interested, like, kind of with like Scottish roots. Do you see like a similarity with blues music?
You know, it's funny because, like, every time I think about, you know, influences and stuff like that, I think it, you know, as I've gone through life, I'm constantly influenced, and you know, it dawned on me probably, you know, sort of my late teens. I mean, I liked stuff, but I didn't really think about why I liked it. You know, I just naturally gravitated towards it. You know, and when I, you know, I think everything I've done, which has exposed me to anything bluesy or rootsy through my life, I've latched onto and sort of, I've taken a little from a lot, you know, and it snowballs and eventually into your own, you know, spider's web.
Right. Well, of course, we're all like a product of what we grow up with and like what we're exposed to and what we're
Yeah,
inspired by.
yeah.
Um, I guess with that I meant like with specifically like within the playing of like the Scottish like folk music. Is there an overlap of like chord progression, song formation, lyric
Oh,
couplets?
well, it's actually Irish, not Scottish.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Although I am
Irish.
going to Scotland in a few weeks' time. Irish, yeah, definitely. If you look back into some of my albums, there's little Irish licks that you know, sort of like diddly dee licks that I sort of throw in, like diddle diddle da 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 diddle diddle da 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 da. You know, that's
Yeah.
at the end of one of my songs on the Kitchen Table album called Red Light. And I don't know, you know, I mean, yeah. When I kind of realised obviously I knew, you know, my connections with Ireland, but I'd never been. And I decided one year that I was, you know, I sort of bugged my dad and come on, we're going to go to Ireland and find our roots sort of thing. And, you know, we did several trips driving around Ireland and, you know, hitting the bars and, you know, I was trying to get gigs there and I was getting gigs and then I was so like drawn. I was flying back once a month just to do these gigs, just so I could get back there and indulge in it, you know. And yeah, I certainly sort of, you know, dug in, and I ended up playing at the Clonakilty Guitar Festival, which was fantastic. And yeah, I'm very much drawn to Ireland, so much so I'm kind of thinking about buying a place there, you know, sometime in the future. Yeah, because because I mean, you know, I I love everything about Ireland, and I've got getting my Irish passport soon as well, so it's going to be a big thing, you know, to be a citizen of Ireland, and it's taken this long to sort it out, but obviously with the EU as well, it's in my benefit. It's a thing that, you know, it makes sense for me to do, but also I think it's going to draw me much closer back to my roots. So
That's
yeah,
that's beautiful. And
yeah,
I guess the one thing I kind of noticed with I guess the crossover of Irish guitar and blues, there's that kind of 6/8 feel, like that lick you're describing. There's that kind of that
yeah.
triplety thing, and also like I've seen, and I don't know, I've only seen a few, but kind of like Celtic guitarist where it's in open tunings. It's kind of like
Mm.
similar to like slide playing open tunings.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Um, no, it's great to be able to include those kind of influences and those guitar. I mean, on my House of Mercy album, I have a fabulous musician called Eileen Healy, a violin player, fiddle player from Cork. She hosts and runs a lot of the top sessions in Cork, you know, the acoustic sessions, and they're just magical. You know, you go in and everything's silent, and you know the band are playing, and it's all very acoustic and super, you know, vibey. Um, and so, you know, I've soaked up those sessions, and I really love that style of playing. You know, the roots instruments and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, it's like subconsciously soaks in, and you know, House of Mercy record was definitely definitely a lot of that going through it, as well as the bluegrass element as well from the Reno brothers that play on that record too.
That's so cool to be like. I guess that's the with blues in the kind of like general context. That's what's so cool about it is the 1-4-5. You can put just about anything kind of over it because of how it works, and like that's super cool to be able to throw all those influences in it and be able to have like other people bring out things you wouldn't have thought of yourself.
Absolutely.
I guess one thing I found really interesting, you brought up the kitchen table, or the kitchen table album, and then on this record, there's a table alone. Table seems to be like a metaphor for you. Do you see like do you find a lot of like meaning from the table?
Well, I think it's certainly a place where things start and finish. Meals, conversations, meetings, drinks, food. It's just like it's a place where anything can happen, and so things do happen around the table. The table for one, actually, that was an interesting moment. Sitting alone eating a meal, quite happy, but just noticing the reactions of people in the restaurant because I was sat alone. So that's where that came from. The kitchen table is obviously, everyone could write that song, with things that happen to them around the kitchen table. That's always a fun element to when I play it live. I always start it off, as, okay, has anybody had sex on the kitchen table lately? So that always gets their attention.
The kind of take that you run songwriting seminars in what do you call it, like retreats?
Retreat.
So, and like the kitchen table is such like, or just a table, right? Is such like. That can be so many things as far as like a songwriting exercise or like narration. Like now, I guess as far as like your songwriting, do you have like a practice that you do? Are you a lyric person? Is it inspiration?
Well, again, it's like I don't stick. The only rules are the ones you stick by, and I hate to put rules around a creative sort of moment. And I used to think to myself, what do I do? I mean, because I never think about those sort of things until I sort of think about them. And I think, well, okay, I always had to clean the house or clean the room I was doing it in first. I always had to make sure it was super tidy before I would sit down. I don't know, sort of to focus on this sort of, moment has to be kind of, for me, the house needed to be tidy, and that's why. And I would do it, and I'd be going, I just want to sit down and play. Why am I tidying up? You know what I mean? It's like a weird thing that you do, and then I'd sit, and then I would just, go through my poems, because I'm always writing poems if I'm sat on a plane or train or middle of the night or something comes in my head, and that moment when it comes in your head, you need to put it down because you will forget it, So if you're rhyming a couple of lines that are really cool lines, just write them down and then go back to them and include them or work on them later. That's what I do. And then every now and again, I look through all my notes, and there's a whole bunch of, songs in different stages, or poems in different stages. And if I have a session, I'll sit down and it's like looking through a wardrobe. I'll think I'll wear that one or something, and then you bring it out, and then you got to go and iron it. And that's the kind of process I go through, and eventually they'll craft themselves into something that is, it gets its own identity, and then you can start practicing it. And they're all in different sort of stages of creation, really. And then if we do like a session, it's all about sort of when something jumps out and inspires you, and, to work on it. And and different, to go back and hone it and to rehash it and stuff is a good thing, because, you keep the cherries and then you add more cherries, and then eventually you think, now that's ready to present to the band or start building up, to jam it. And then you try and get a couple of hooks in there and get things working in the chorus or whatever. It's like building a Christmas tree. Does it need that extra bit of tinsel? Maybe not. But you've got to feel your way. It's just like, it's using all your natural kind of instincts to when you feel it's right.
I think those are wise words indeed. Because I've talked with some people and they do every day, or some people that only take when the moment's there. But like your process, it sounds like the most, as far as for me, like I relate to that a lot, because that's kind of what I find myself doing, like finding the thing, jotting it down, like having it, or doing the phone recording, having that bit, and then like, sweet, I'll come back to that, or the next thing happens, and then you have to go to the gig, or you have to do this, or you're stuck there all night, and like, so to be able to come back and kind of like cherry pick through it. So,
and it doesn't put yourself. As soon as you start putting yourself under pressure to create, it's over. Because creation is all about trying and playing around and playtime. And when you've got, confinements, you can't play, you can't try things, because trying things isn't wrong. It's never wrong. There are no rules. You try it until you feel it works. And that's you, that's your style. That's you as an artist deciding that.
Yeah. One, I guess, on the opposite of like songwriting lyrically, well, actually, like hearing stories from your dad, did that kind of like, and you said he wrote songs and wrote poetry, right? Did you kind of see how he would do it? Like, is that similar to how you do?
Kind of, yeah. He was like a comedy writer. Most of his poems were funny, but it doesn't really matter. He definitely had his own little style, and he was really good actually. He'd write in a sort of predictable kind of American sort of comedy tunes and stuff like that. He wouldn't write love songs and things, or but it would be like sort of slapstick style. He would write like vaudeville kind of thing, and so but his lyrics were funny and they were very clever. And you'd be bursting out laughing, and he could nail it. Yeah, he was a great poet, my dad.
And I think there's like a certain comfort behind comedy too. You know what I mean? Like I think if you're being comedic, it's easier to like, it's a different type of vulnerability, I think. Like where it's like, of course it's supposed to be dodoy. It didn't land, it landed and it was slapstick, but that was the point. Like.
Exactly. Yeah. And he definitely gave me my humor. He couldn't have a serious conversation with my dad. For my whole life, I've never had a serious conversation with him. And, I took him on tour. He was very positive all the time. He loved to drink and, he was very proud of me. So, when things started picking up and I was touring and I go, come on, Dad, we're going to go to America. And he'd be like, oh, yeah, all right. There was no, I can't do that, He would be like, yeah, come on, let's go. I'd be like, yeah, come on then. And we'd have a laugh, And, I took him to a lot of places, America, Ireland, Holland, Cyprus, all around the UK, the Orkney Islands with the Proclaimers. I mean, he's had some great times on the road with me. And the great thing about that is when you come home and at some point in the future, I would hear him sort of relaying that story. And, it would be completely different from my recollection because, I only sort of soak up so much because it's my, I'm the performer, I'm kind of thinking professional, is my sound all right, is my guitar strings, all that, and he's kind of looking at it as I'm on a jolly,
Yeah.
you know. And I'd get off stage many times, and he'd be at the bar at the end of the bar, absolutely hammered, and giving all my CDs away to all his new friends. That was my dad, and everyone loved him, and everyone always asked after him, when I'd go back there. So it's very important, I think, to share your your music, what it affords you to do, to be able to travel and see the world and take your music. Doing it on your own is great and it's wonderful, it's living the dream, but to share it with your loved ones is something that is priceless. And it always gave me really great feeling, when he would relay the stories of us being on the road.
That's so special. That's so cool. Like
Yeah.
to be able to, and like, I totally understand when you're there. You're like, oh, this is. I gotta make sure this works. This is. They're coming in. Is it a good night? Are the promoters happy? Whatever. You know what I mean? There's so many things going through your head that
Yeah.
that it's good that there's someone who's like bringing the fun. And
Oh
just
yeah.
getting to celebrate that with you. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Um,
It's brilliant.
well, I guess where I wanted to go before was with like, so I've also noticed with every record I was able to get of yours that there's at least like an instrumental track, and
Mm.
I'm like, that's very Freddie King. Like that's very cool that's kind of given its space, and with the new record, Fortuna, and the head track being the instrumental, like. Is Freddie King kind of an influence in that sense? Are you like, do you write instrumentals differently?
Absolutely, Freddie King is an influence. Yeah, but I mean, it's not just Freddie King. I mean, there's so many outstanding instrumentals that I absolutely love. And I started learning guitar. And it was instrumentals I was playing. The first thing that when I was officially taught was finger picking style instrumentals.
Yeah.
And I think, if you can sort of nail that style and play a beautiful piece of music, it's jaw dropping. It can be jaw dropping, I mean, things like Albatross, the dueling banjos, they're all great instrumentals, and they're all brilliant, pieces of music that you can recognize instantly from their melody lines. They're strong melody lines, and they evoke as much emotion, I think, as lyrics. So yeah.
That's was it.
Yeah.
Do you often find yourself coming up with melody lines based around like an instrumental, like kind of coming up with a melody line on the guitar, or then basing the what you would sing kind of around that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, as I say, like that track on the new album, When It's Gone, that was an instrumental for a long, long time. And then eventually I wrote the lyrics. I pieced the lyrics together, and I thought, yeah, that works now. I mean, it was going to be an instrumental. Oh, I mean, I could play it as an instrumental, and it holds up. Um, but I think it really works now with that lyrical sort of content on it. But yeah, I'd like to be able to play the song, and it needs to be a strong melody line, for me anyway. A nice hook, nice hooks and stuff. In most of my stuff. But I think instrumentals are very important, and they shouldn't be overlooked. And it's a lot of fun to write an instrumental. I mean, and also the parts of the instrumental take you on a journey on their own.
Yeah. That's interesting that When It's Gone was started off that way. That song really stuck out to me when I went through the record, because I go through it a few times before reading anything about the person I'm going to talk to.
Okay.
And that song in particular, especially like the chorus, is such a unique track compared to the rest of the tracks on this record. And it like for you, do you find that with that tune in particular? Is it because it kind of came from this instrumental writing process?
Yeah, quite possibly. And also, a lot of people um, just just go like they really love it. It's one that's mentioned a lot, and I'm really happy with it. Yeah, it's quite a different sort of craft. Like the way I crafted it, it's like two parts. It just rolls around two parts, but it's kind of flows nicely. I think that
Yeah.
melody flows, and it's just the two sort of parts, and it just back and forth goes back and forth and back and forth, and you could play it forever. It's one of those you think it's like one of those optical illusions that just kind of rolls into itself all the time, and and I thought, well, if I put a nice strong vocal over the top in a higher register, because I don't do too much now. A lot of my stuff, because they're stories, I don't want to be blasting it out so people can't understand what I'm saying. The diction needs to be there, the pronunciation, and so that's why I sort of bring it down to a lower register to enunciate the words correctly, so people can follow the story. But that one, I wanted. You know what? It reminds me of Maggie May. That was one of my old favourite songs from years ago. Where wake up, Maggie, I think I. It's one of
Yeah.
those sort of you know, bleating sort of blaring lyrics, which I'm singing joyfully, but the sentiment's actually quite poignant, and so yeah, there's a lot of sort of things going on in that one.
Yeah, it's a beautiful tune. That's an
Right.
interesting. That's an interesting, like I guess a process to kind of come to is knowing when to dial back the performance so the message
Mm,
of the song can be kind of clearer. Um,
right.
Now, with like some of these other tunes, did you find that you had to kind of dial back performance too, or kind of enhance like that? That I guess when aside from like when would the opposite happen for you? Like I think like preaching for the choir, there's enough space in that song to really like kind
Mm,
of belt it like you do, and kind of like hear that narrative.
mm,
And same with like Dirty Water. I feel like the narrative's heard and it's kind of got that oomph to it. But
yeah.
was that like a choice or was that something that kind of just felt right?
Well, preaching to the choir's got the gospel element in it, and certain things come through on certain songs that are required,
Right.
and you don't over egg the pudding with everything, And I think with a studio album, you have that luxury of being able to, either push a lyric forward or push a little riff forward to make that song memorable, you know. And there's always some element that makes a song, hooky, whatever, that you would remember. And and the Preacher to the Choir is actually this, the main single of the album in my world, in my head about that. I was like, yeah, this one's the one this is the single that will push forward on the record. That's why it's on the front. It's when I get in the car and it comes on as the first single of the record, it feels good. It feels like a nice door opening, like a strong single to me. And it's kind of it's produced. There's a lot of stuff going on. It's a nice presentation, really, of I guess me all round: songwriting, vocal, and guitar. And the message is kind of poignant as well for today. I think people are just a bit miffed and peed off with everything.
Yeah. No. I think it's
being told this and being told that. Um, so yeah, it was kind of where I am at the moment, where I feel like after the lockdown, that's my sort of gut instinct as well. So yeah. And it's really about what the song needs. I mean, I'm a bit of a stickler for that. Whatever the story is, the vocal needs to be up. You need to be able to hear the lyrics and the words because they make you feel what you feel when you listen to a track.
Right. Was it man? As far as like the lockdown, what did you do? As far as like, I found myself really having to dive into a routine. Like I had to make like, okay, for this hour I'm going to practice this, learn this picking technique, or practice to write. I'm going to write or whatever. I had to do that to get through that.
Yeah. Well, I think once the novelty had worn off for everybody, and getting drunk every night for the first sort of 6 weeks, and then we were like, right, what are we going to do then? For us, we were in London. There was 4 of us in the house. In my head, I was like, well, this is a good time to piece together the album, demo, concentrate. I had my bass player locked down with us. And that goes off on a tangent story because he actually died in our house several months into the lockdown. Yeah, but before that happened, we made a TV show. Well, not a TV show, but a little sort of online show once a week, which was something that we really look forward to. Producing. My partner is a fine dining chef. And then there was myself and Robert Red Daniels, who's an amazing 6-string bass player. So between the 3 of us, we created a sort of 1-hour segment, including obviously performance, food. We do a live cooking segment. And then during the lockdown, we actually built a sort of a bistro bar in the back garden. So we could actually get dressed up and go to the pub. And sort of our neighbour, cut a hole in the fence and put a drop-down mirrored sort of, bar thing on chains, so he could have a drink with us in his garden. So we had our little bubble going on, and once a week we go live for an hour, and it was called Love in Lockdown. And I do all the graphics and stuff, and we called the bar was called the Dodgy Fox, because we had so many foxes appear because there was nobody on the roads, and the wildlife was taking back London. So we had all these foxes jumping over the gardens and ripping the hell out of the gardens. So we called it the Dodgy Fox. Oh, one of the foxes went under my neighbour's shed and had babies. So we had all baby foxes running around. And of course, that's where it was born. So we would, and they're online. There's a few of them online. And of course, you had the technical problems of feedback. Well, the other segment of the show was I would contact one of the characters that I'd met on my years of touring and invite them to be a guest at the segment called Character at the Cocktail Bar. So they would be lined up ready for me to run in, and I'd make a cocktail at the Dodgy Fox bar while they were making their cocktail somewhere around the world, and we'd be discussing what the hell's going on, how you're dealing with lockdown, blah 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 blah. And usually the person had a record or a book, or was telling them about what they were doing and stuff as well. So they were creatives. And so there'd be like a 3-song performance, then like a 20-minute segment of Jonathan chopping up things and cooking it, then a character at the cocktail bar with a quick beer, and then back in the studio to finish off with another 3 songs. And then the last bit, you'd see Jonathan coming out with the delicious finished product of what he'd cooked and putting it in front of us, and us eating it going, have a great week, So it was called Love in Lockdown, basically.
That's amazing. That's such a cool, like, what a way for everyone to get involved and kind of get the broader internet community that you've already kind of developed involved and have something to do. That's really cool.
It was a lot of fun. I mean, because it felt like a live show. Well, it was a live show for us, but it was also, a chance for people to kind of log on and see what we were up to and communicate properly, and that whole sort of live feeling for an hour was quite, it was warts and all,
That's incredible. Well, Bex, I like because I came up with that schedule, right, and I had that routine going, and I found myself streaming a lot for the venues, the local venues. They'd bring a band in, and we would do like a benefit stream, and I like that was kind of where 2020 went for me and my group, as we helped out a lot and did a lot of fundraising and stuff like that. But a live TV show like that would have been way more fun.
Well, we were still
maybe.
creating, and it was great because Jonathan would be thinking like, what am I going to cook this week? And, and it was always something spectacular. And, so that there was that. I mean, cooking is like massive. Everybody loves to see someone cooking something.
Yeah.
And then we'd be there at the end eating it going, oh my God, it's gorgeous, and everybody, it's just like addictive viewing. It was good.
Bex, I really appreciate your time and your flexibility. I know this has been a pleasure to dive into your career and to have this conversation. Before we go, I have one more question. You toured with Big Brother and the holding company as filling in for Janice.
Yeah, that was something.
How'd that come about, and how was that?
That's a massive one. Well, my agent, one of my agents in the UK, he regularly used to bring over the sort of, the vintage Woodstock era artists from San Francisco to tour in the UK. And he was actually asked by Sam Andrews from Big Brother, we need a British Janice for when we come over. And JR, his name was, said, well, there's only one person that can do that, and bless him. And I got the call and luckily got the job, and went out on the road with the San Francisco Knights when they came over. And that was that included Greg Douglas from Steve Miller Band, who's phenomenal. Yeah. We went out and toured, and I just thought, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it or what. It's a lot of belting every night. But, my voice actually got stronger after 4 or 5 days. I was really nailing it, and I just thought I couldn't believe it. It was brilliant, and it opened up a huge, opportunities for me in America. And I was invited over to stay with a good friend of mine called Crowbar. Somebody said, you speak so affectionately about a guy called Crowbar. But no, he's like this fantastic old original hippie from San Francisco who puts on these parties every year called the Artista parties, and they always involve like original members of Woodstock and stuff like that. And it's one of those sort of gangs where you get the jacket and everything. It's really cool. And he invited me over, and when I got there, he'd actually built me my own bedroom in his garden, which is like a little log cabin.
Yeah.
So he'd gone and bought a whole, flat pack Swedish cabin and built me my own bedroom, and it's now named Bex's room. And so every time I hit California or Petaluma, up in San Francisco, it's my room, and I've stayed there many times with him now. We're good friends. So it was great, and a huge honour, and I learned an awful lot from those guys. And Sam, was a lovely guy. Sadly, he died several months later. But he did say to me, I gave Janice the first job and you the last.
Damn.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, my gosh. What an honor. Jeez.
Yeah, it was. It was great.
As far as, I guess, prepping your voice for that, if you don't mind me kind of picking into that, was it you have that, in you already? Was it just kind of honing that and or was it breathing? What did that look like?
No, well, to be honest, I think, all my life since I realized I had a voice or, I could hold a note, I've always been able to sort of mimic people. And I think when karaoke came out and everybody was trying to sing their favorite artists, I mean, I was no different really, but I could sort of nail it. And I've always sang, I've got that kind of sort of voice, and I can bend it, from country to jazz to blues to rock, to old style, back porchy kind of, and so, but, I want obviously got to find my own voice after years of influence of all those great singers. I feel like I'm settled in my voice now, but years ago, I'd be trying to, mimic people from, Tina Turner to Cher to, Rod Stewart to Axl Rose, AC/DC, and I could do them all, in those sort of tones. And so Janice was obviously something that I had to sort of just focus and listen and soak up her persona. But when I got on stage, what I really wanted to do was to deliver the performance like she was alive. So I didn't want to do it sort of note for note like it was recorded. So it would have been like every little nuance. I wanted to do it like she was in me from somewhere else, portraying it and delivering it like if she would have been alive now, she may have ad-libbed like that or whatever. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I wanted a real life performance, and I think I delivered that to a degree. And I'm very much a spur of the moment sort of gut instinct performer anyway, and I cannot stick to a set list.
Yeah.
I just can't do it. I don't do it for myself, and my band hate me.
Was it? I relate to that. You never know who's gonna react to what, and you're like, "We're killing it with this. Let's keep this going." Like I get that. I get that. That, but that also keeps it fresh for you and for everyone involved.
Yes, right. And it keeps people on their toes, and it keeps the adrenaline high, and it keeps you on the edge. And if you can nail it. I mean, at the end of my last American tour, as a 3-piece, we were so tight, and it was like sort of super high energy training every night, like you were in the gym. And by the end of 6 weeks, we were so ripped. I get on stage, and they never knew what I was going to start with. And I'd just have to play a couple of sort of notes, and boom, everyone was in, and everyone was tight. And it was a phenomenal feeling to be that tight with your band. And I can't do predictability. So, once you start being predictable, you lose that kind of passion. You lose that fly by the seat of your pants kind of feeling. Which I think once you got that on stage, people are just mesmerized because you're like, your frequency is so high because you're enjoying it so much, and you're radiating that energy. That's what makes a great show,
Definitely wise advice there. Bex,
it's the best drug in the world.
Yeah. Well, when you're
Really?
when you see that and you're drawn to that, you feel, as a viewer, you feel that like that excitement, right? And so
and
as a
people,
performer, it's like next level.
yeah, that's it. And people connect with you when you're feeling like that, and they pick it up, and then they start feeding off it. I mean, that's when I come off stage after a performance, which has been electrifying and absolutely bang on, and you come up and people are sort of reeling from that performance you've given them. You've connected with them. You've actually plugged into them, and so that's when they come up after the show and they're gushing and they're alive, and they're it's kind of like. And it's just, it's nothing like live, performance. And I've started wearing these sort of mini, sunglasses that take video of people's expressions and their reactions when I come off stage, because they're priceless.
That's amazing. I've definitely been the gushy, like, oh my God, that was so, I think we all have been that. I think you got to be that before you can like do it. You know what I mean? To appreciate someone, that connection with somebody, you know?
I think for me, that is the reason I do what I do, is to be able to gift someone, a complete stranger, that euphoria. You know, I mean, you know, yes, it's healing and all that, and it's, you know, but it's something that it's so precious. You know, there's no negativity about it. You can do it like time and time and time again, and it's, you know, it's the best thing, I think, to be able to give someone a feeling and a musical presentation that affects them like that and makes them joyous. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Bex, I really appreciate your time and your flexibility with everything.
No problem.
Is there something? Thank you. Is there something that we didn't get to cover that you want to plug before that I might have missed?
Well, I just that you know, if anyone's interested in coming to our writing retreats in Cyprus, they should just hit bexmarshall.com and go to the Cyprus writing retreat page, because you know, it is a thing that people can come on from all over the world, and I have special guests. We've got Nick Moss from Chicago. We've got a Mike Ross from the UK, and you've got a Nick Moss. Nick Moss. I mix them up all the time, but no, it's Nick Moss who's coming from Chicago in May, and Greg Douglas from the Steve Miller Band's coming in October.
Oh wow!
So if anybody fancies a week with a proper rock star, and me, and Jonathan, fine dining chef, and a whole bunch of other amazing players in North Cyprus, then to reach out and give us just to give us a message, and because it's what it's all about, is creating new music for us.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome, Bex. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, like I was saying, and the flex. This has been it's been a wild couple days here, but I've really much enjoyed diving into your career and your music, and this was a very nice conversation, so thank you.
You're welcome, and lovely to speak to you too. Let's keep in touch.
Awesome. Yeah, let me know when you...
Yo, Spike Spiegel here. You just listened to Zig of the Gig podcast. Keep riding the bebop. See you, Space Cowboy. Bang.